I start high school. I don't start regular school. Like, we had decided that I was going to do the fast track program so I could graduate, not get out, just graduate early and then be able to stay at home or do whatever I needed to be there with Sophie. I wanted to be out before I gave birth. And so my due date was 12/31. So then late August, a year ago today, I go for my, I'll say this. The 2 weeks following, I still wasn't showing, and it was kind of like freaking me out. And I was telling everybody, I was like, I haven't felt her kick. I'm not showing. Like, I think there's something wrong.
Oh, wow.
Like, I told everybody.
You had like intuition about it?
Yes. And I had an appointment before that, and I told the doctor, I was like, I think there's something wrong. And she was like, no, like, this is just like normal pregnancy jitters. She was like, you'll feel her kick soon enough. Like, you'll start showing. You're a tiny girl anyways. That's why you're not showing. Blah, 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 blah. You're a tall girl. I'm sure she's just in your rib cage. I don't know. And I was like, I don't know. Like, I know there's something wrong. One of my mom's best friends, her daughter, got pregnant around the same time as me, but she's in her middle 20s. And it was with her boyfriend. They're married now. They have a beautiful baby named Beckham, and he's just the cutest little boy. I've gotten to babysit him once so far, and he's just a light. He is so cute. But me and her went through our whole pregnancy together, and like we shared all of, because me and her are big overthinkers. She's a very big overthinker. She was like, no, same, there's something wrong. I was like, really? Lainey, we've got stuff going on. And then I told her, I was like, I don't know if I'm overthinking this, but I think there's something wrong. And even my mom, like, we talked about it the other day, like, because we knew the anniversary of this was coming up, and she was like, I didn't want to say anything to you, and I was trying to trust the doctors, but I was so worried about you not showing. Like, I thought there was something wrong too. And which, like, me and my mom went to every single appointment together. We were very in tune. We spent all of our time together. If Sam couldn't go to an appointment, he actually hadn't seen her at this point. He hadn't been able to go to a sonogram appointment because the only other one I had was at 9 weeks when she was about the size of a gummy bear. That's what my mom called her the whole time because I could never pick a name. She called her Little Gummy Bear. My mom was so excited. Like, it was a very quick switch up from my parents being disappointed, what are we gonna do, to then my dad was like, can we name her Remy, like Remington, after the gun, because he's so yeehaw. And like, he called her Remy the whole time. My mom called her Gummy Bear. My brother was like, where am I gonna live, because you're about to kick me out for this nursery. It was a whole thing. They were all so excited though, and my sister-in-law, my brother, they were so excited. And then so then we go for the 21-week appointment. My boyfriend at the time, Sam, had just started Tarleton. That was his first day of classes. So he drove down so he could go see her for the sonogram, and then he'd have to leave right after before the appointment. And it would just be me and my mom for the appointment. So we go, we get the sonogram, and as I'm laying on the table, I'm like holding my mom's hand, Sam's holding my leg, and like they're standing there with me, and they start showing her, and like everybody's crying, like it's so sweet. And the screen just looks oddly gray. Like, I literally said, I was like, I know I'm 17 years old and I don't know much about pregnancy. But this doesn't look like it does in the movies. Like, I feel like there's more black. Like, why is it so gray? Like, I feel like there's not enough black around her face like there normally is to shape the womb. And they were like, or the sonogram lady, she's not allowed to answer any questions.
Really?
You probably know that. Like, if they can't give you any medical hints, diagnosis to anything that's going on. They have to completely stay straight-faced. They can't answer anything.
It can only be the doctor, pretty much?
Yes. Okay. Otherwise, because that, like, puts a liability on them. Like, if they're wrong or they, like, stress the patient out, which causes, like, a miscarriage, like, something like that, they can't say anything to stress the patient out intentionally or anything. So she said, have you felt any leaking? And I was like, leaking what? And she was like, amniotic fluid. There seems to be a lack of amniotic fluid. They can say like apparent things. And I was like, well, I mean, I was really sweaty the other day. Like, I thought that's just like me being hot and pregnant. Like, I don't know. I thought I'd pee my pants a little bit. I was like, I don't know. And then she was like, well, I'm not sure. And she was like, how far did you say you were along? And I was like, well, I'm doing like December 31st. And she was like, okay. I'm like, and then like she just kept acting like she was growing really small. Like there wasn't very much amniotic fluid. She said there's almost no amniotic fluid. And I was like, girl, I don't think that's right. Not that I know much about pregnancy. And my mom, like, she was kind of concerned as well. And so the sonogram lady was like, well, I'll send these to your doctor and then they'll tell you what they think's going on. And so we walk out. My ex-boyfriend Sam kisses me goodbye. He's like, let me know what's going on. Like, if there's something wrong or if it's okay, like, just let me know. Like, I have to go to make it to class. I was like, okay. And so me and my mom, we go into the appointment, and they tell me that they're going to do a cervical exam to see if my amniotic fluid, like my sac, has broken prematurely, and maybe that's what happened. And if it was, they'd patch it back up, because apparently that's a thing, and then fill you with they call it amnioinfusions. It's saline. They inject saline to act in the place of amniotic fluid. And so they do the cervical exam. They say everything seems to be intact. We're going to send you downstairs to a specialist, and they're going to tell you what they think. They're like, there's very little amniotic fluid. This is my OBGYN. At the time, she's a high-risk doctor because I'm a teenager. You're high-risk pregnancy automatically. So we go downstairs. Me and my mom are in the waiting room. We fill out all the work. We're like so on edge. Me and her are Googling everything while in the waiting room. I know. And so we Google everything. I come across what it ends up being. And that's like the last thing we looked at before we were like, oh, and we're going to put the phone down because it like started to get dark.
Yeah.
But I remember seeing that and I'm like, that's crazy. That's not what it is. And then we put our phones down and we're like praying. We're sitting there praying. And I'm trying not to like freak out too much because obviously high stress on a pregnancy is rough anyways. And so then we go in. It's just the sonogram tech, a different one. And at the specialist, she's doing it. She tells us she can't answer any questions. She's just going to do this, see what they can see. And then if she has to, she'll do an internal sonogram if they can't see very well because the lack of amniotic fluid makes it hard to see. So they start to do it, and as she's doing it, she was like, did you feel that? I was like, feel what? She was like, look, she just kicked. She was like, look, she just kicked again, and I felt it.
Oh, wow.
And that was the first time I ever felt her kick. And I'm like, Mom, I just felt it. Because you can first feel it from the inside before you can feel it from the outside.
Yeah, for sure.
And so my mom couldn't feel it, but I was like, oh my gosh. Like, I was so hyped. I was like, what do you mean? And I was like so excited because it like helped put together. I'd been feeling it the whole time, but I didn't know that was kicking because it feels like gas bubbles that early.
It's like flutters, right?
Yeah. But then like at that point when I saw her kick and I felt it at the same time, I felt it for the rest of the time. And so I was so excited. But takes a turn of events. And I make like dark humor jokes, so I'll try to avoid that for this part because it helps me cope.
I feel you. I'm a comedian, I know.
Yeah. I act like I am one. So then she starts to look and she's like, we can't really detect anything. Like I'm gonna have the doctor come in and we're gonna do an internal sonogram, see what we can see. So the doctor comes in, they both come back in. She asks the sonogram tech to leave for a second, and she's like, we can't see much. We can't really tell what's going on. We have an idea of what it might be. We're gonna look for renal arteries, and that will be. We're not finding any kidneys. We're gonna look for some renal arteries because if like maybe there's just a different problem. And it's harder to see the kidneys, but if we can find the renal arteries in this internal sonogram, then that'll answer more questions for us. But if we can't, then we'll take about it a different way. She didn't really give us much like clarity on what they were looking for, none of that. So then we're laying there, but I had a horrible feeling in my stomach. I had a horrible feeling. And because you don't hear about this. Like you don't even really hear about like teenage pregnancies going wrong. Like I feel like I've never heard of like a teenager having a miscarriage or like them like having a stillbirth. Like I don't feel like I've heard about that, especially in teenage pregnancies. Like they just have to have their kid and it sucks in the sense that like nobody
and then they get an MTV show.
Yes, exactly. And then they like have the struggle and bad baby daddies, and I'm like, so what do you mean? And so then we sit there and they start to do it. So an internal sonogram, they have to go inside of you. Unfortunately, it's not very fun with like a little sonogram stick, but like not in your stomach. That would be rough. And I'm not going to go into details. Yeah. So then as they're doing it, I'm laying there and they're kind of talking to themselves, and me and my mom are like clutching hands, and like me and her both have rings on, so it's painful, but like I don't even really remember that part. I just remember like weird details. And then from probably that point, and I'll finish telling the situation, but from that point on, and like I tell this to everybody, I didn't feel like it was in my body. Like talk about an out of body experience. I remember it from more of like a point higher than me.
Really?
Like I don't remember it from like my point of view, which is weird.
That is interesting.
Like, I don't even like remember like really what my body felt like. Like, it was just a weird.
Yeah, because you're like experiencing a traumatic
very
experience.
And like numb. And so they're talking, and I can hear them say that they aren't detecting any renal arteries. And I've never heard myself make a sound like the cries that like were coming out of my body, because I kind of knew. Like, I didn't know. Nobody had said anything yet. And I'm just sitting there sobbing, and my mom's sobbing, and my mom doesn't cry very much. My mom's a very strong person. She's been through a lot of horrible things in her life that have made her very strong. I wouldn't say they made her hard, because she's still my mom. She's still precious. She's a very strong woman. And she was crying her eyes out, and I was crying my eyes out. And it was horrible. And so I finally look at them. And out of like just frustration, I say, "Can you just tell me what's going on?" And she goes on to tell me that they finish up. She's like, "Let us finish up, and then I'll explain to you." She said, "We're not finding any renal arteries." And so then she has the nurse or the sonogram tech leave the room, and she says, "We believe that your baby has what's called bilateral renal agenesis, which is the absence of both kidneys, which will ultimately cause her to be incompatible for life outside of the womb. You have two options. You can either go out of state to Colorado somewhere and get an abortion. Just don't come back and tell us about it if you do decide to make that choice. You can terminate they say terminate. They don't say abortion. They say terminate the pregnancy, because she does have a heartbeat. She's still kicking. She's still breathing in the womb, like breathing in the sense of like, I don't know. So it's not legal here." And my mom asks a bunch of questions like, could they induce pregnancy early? And I look at her and I'm like, girl, like,
you didn't even consent with me.
I know. I was like, what are we talking about right now? And my mom's just looking out for me. My mom asked so many questions about, is this going to affect Ava's health? Will she be safe? I'm like, I don't really care. I'm keeping my kid. I hadn't said that yet. But then she says, your second option is to go full term, carry all the way till you naturally go into labor. They might have to induce you, because we don't really know how that works. Apparently at some point in there, they told me that low amniotic fluid causes preterm pregnancies. Didn't remember that, didn't hear that. My next OB that I switched over to didn't say anything about that. So I wasn't really aware that that was a possibility.
Wow.
But anywho, so she tells me that, or she's like, that's even if you make it full term, because due to lack of space, because of low amniotic fluid, she could turn over, lay on her umbilical cord, and suffocate in the womb. And from that point on, lived in fear for the rest of my pregnancy that I was going to wake up one morning and she'd be passed away, and then I was going to have to go deliver her stillborn. They said that, but if you do make it full term, she'll be born, and because of the process of swallowing amniotic fluid and peeing back out, which produces more amniotic fluid, that develops their lungs, that process. So without that, what it would take her out, that sounds terrible, but what would eventually cause her to pass away would be lack of lung development. It could be 3 minutes, 3 hours. We don't know how long she would live. There's no way to tell while they're in the womb. They can tell after, but then at that point, you're still just like waiting game. And so she said, if you decide to continue on with the pregnancy, you can continue coming to appointments. Just show up to your next appointment and we'll continue treating it like a normal pregnancy. And so we leave, and me and my mom were I called Sam while I was sitting in there during the whole thing to tell him what was going on, kind of the best I could, and that he needed to come back down because he was already at Tarleton. And he says, okay, like something happened with my car, but I'll be there as soon as I can. His mom calls me. She's so upset. Obviously, like they're losing their grandchild. Like it's a hard thing. And that they were going to come see me when they could come visit me at the house, because we were going to go back to my house. So me and my mom leave. She had called my dad at some point in this. And so as we're in the car driving, we're kind of just in shock. Like my mom's hugged me, I don't know how many times, told me she's so sorry, baby. And like my mom calling me baby sends me to shambles every single time. I'm sobbing. And so then we are driving. She's like, you have to eat something. Dad will come sit with us, but you have to eat something. I chose Olive Garden, surprisingly. Foreshadowing, I feel like, because now I serve at Olive Garden sometimes. But we go sit, and as we're sitting there, we tell him everything they said, and he was like, so what have you decided? Because I haven't told anybody at this point. I really hadn't voiced it. I made my decision the moment she said the first few words, but I hadn't said anything yet to anybody because I was trying to gauge how everybody else felt about the situation.
Yeah, for sure.
Not that would change my mind, but we're sitting there. I explain the whole thing, and I say, this might be crazy because I know she's not going to survive anyways, but I only have so much time left with her. Why should I cut it any shorter? She's safe in my womb. And at this point, I had been following a million pro-life organizations on Instagram. I've seen what an abortion looks like. And I said, I don't think I could bear to have her ripped piece by piece out of my womb and shorten the life that's already so short. Take her away from a spot where God has placed her in my hands, in my womb, where she's safe and she's warm and she only knows love and doesn't know pain. Why would I give her such a painful death when she's perfectly fine with me? I said, today's the first day that I felt her kick. I already love her more than I can even express. Not that I didn't love her before. I loved her so much before, but feeling her kick, it's just, my baby was in there and I couldn't bear the thought of having her removed. And my dad, I think he heard me wrong, and he was like, Ava, I disagree with you. And I said, what? And he was like, you're not terminating your pregnancy. I was like, where did you pick that up in that whole speech? I was like, where did you gather that? And my mom was like, honey, she's agreeing with us. And he was like, oh, okay, good. No, I'm behind you on that one. Oh, okay, thank you.
Oh,
so if anybody questioned if my parents were going to back me on getting an abortion, they weren't. And they were going to make me power through that. Probably, well, I say that. They would have approached it the best way they could, but they were ultimately, this is how God's laid it out for us. You're not going against that. Love you, but no.
Yeah.
And so I didn't eat not one bite of my chicken Alfredo. Not one bite. I couldn't bear it. And then as we walked out, my mom said, you know who you should call? Sam and Chrissy. That's my youth pastor and my youth pastor's wife. And I called them because in my pregnancy, before we knew the diagnosis, Olive Garden, surprisingly, me and Chrissy went out to eat, my youth pastor's wife. And she gave me, their very first pregnancy was a little girl. And they ended up having a miscarriage. And she gave me all of the sentimental things that she had been holding on for about, like, her son, her oldest son now, I think it was maybe like a few years before that. And I think he's in like 6th grade, maybe a little bit younger than that. I don't know. Sorry, Jasper, if you're listening to this. So it had been years that she had held on to all these little baby girl things. And she took me out to dinner, told me how much she was there to support me through this, how much she loved me and loved my heart. She's always been a very close person to me. And she gave me her baby things. She said, I don't know a person that I think that these girly little sassy baby things would fit more. She's like, I've known people over the years that have come through the youth group, have had kids later on. This fits you perfectly. And I would be blessed if you would take this and make little outfits with Sophie. I didn't know Sophie at the time. That wasn't the name yet, but my baby. And when I tell you that spoke volumes, that she considered a teen pregnancy worthy enough to give me those things and to let my teen pregnancy have that. It's things that had meant so much to her for years.
Yeah.
It spoke volumes. Yeah, and so the moment I get out of Olive Garden this time, just finding out the diagnosis, I call Sam and Chrissy, and they tell me how sorry they are and that they'll do anything they need for me, and they give me the most uplifting words. And later on, Chrissy sent me a whole text because I was talking about, like, and this is later on in my pregnancy, like, how I'd felt guilty about, like, sometimes I would wake up and I'd be in a good mood and then I'd feel guilty about being in a good mood because I was going through something so terrible. I was about to lose my kid. Why am I happy? Right. And she said, you're going to live through your life and you are going to cherish Sophie, but you're also going to live your life, cherish her along with it, but that doesn't have to be the main focus for the rest of your life. You have a story and it's going to be beautiful, and Sophie is an amazing part of that story, and you can carry her with you for the rest of your life, but you can't be sad over her for the rest of your life.
That's a good word.
And like, obviously, like, she also says, like, be sad however long you need to be sad. If you're sad for the rest of your life, that's okay, but you also need to be happy, because Sophie wouldn't want you to sit and be depressed over this for the rest of your life. She said it in much better words than I can ever put it, and much better way, but it like stuck with me, and I'm pretty sure I put it in one of my posts that I had made about celebrating her life. But so I go home that night. Sam comes over, his parents come over, they sit with us for a while, we talk, and then they go home, and he has to go back to college. And then my two best friends, Jillian and Haley, they knew what happened. I told pretty much all my friends that day, I think. And they're all so heartbroken for me, because they're the best friends that anybody could ever have. But Jillian and Haley come over. They've been my best friends since middle school. Well, Haley actually just sophomore year, so the year before. But they come, they sit on the couch. We don't talk about what's going on. They tell me about stuff going on at school. We watch stupid movies, rom-coms. And I told my mom, I was like, I think if they had come over to sit and talk about what was going on, I would have been in a really bad spot. But the fact that they came over, acted normal, and let me just be a normal person for a second who wasn't going through the loss of her child very freshly, it meant so much to me. I don't even think they did it intentionally. That's just how they are. They're yappers. They like to talk. They just like to be girly girls. And I remember I have a photo of us. We just sat there on the couch, and one of them's right here on this side of me, and I have like both of their legs in my lap. I'm facing the TV. They're like backs up against the sides of the couch, and I have a photo of all of us sitting there. And we just sat there, and they like cried with me for a little bit. We still didn't talk about what we were crying about, but they just hugged me and we cried, and I needed that. And then I think it was the day after, Avery, Megan, and my other best friend Maddie, all three of my best friends, they were all I called them my sophomores, because they were, at the time, I guess they would have been my juniors, but they were all three younger than me. And I met them in a child development class where we learned all about teen pregnancy and all about pregnancy in general. So ironic. It was kind of full circle. Yeah. I actually failed the taking home the robotic baby thing. So
wow.
Yeah, it was really awkward. And then when she asked if I was going to do it again because I failed it the first time, I was like, hey, and I'm pregnant and I'm about to deal with this for the rest of my life. Please don't make me do it again. That baby's terrible, y'all. So then Megan had been texting my mom that day, coordinating everybody to come over, bring me a gift, and then sit with me. Not knowing, I don't think they even knew that Jillian and Haley came over the night before. It was just my two friend groups. Knowing that they needed to come be with me. Wow. And they did. And they sat there, and I have a photo from it, and they sat there and prayed with me, and they just loved on me, and they talked about everything. I filled them in on everything, because really, like, my relationship and, like, my pregnancy had kind of been isolating thus forth for most of my friends, and I think it was self-isolating, and the fact that I was worried that their parents wouldn't want them to hang out with me anymore because I was pregnant. And when I tell you, Avery's parents have made me one of their own kids since. Like, we became friends when I was pregnant. Our, like, height of our friendship happened when I was pregnant. And her parents have been such blessings to me. They were so excited for my pregnancy. They were so sad when I found out the diagnosis. Recently, the other day, they gave me Sophie's first Bible with her name engraved on it on the bottom. And I sobbed that somebody thought about that little detail of her first Bible. I know I'm kind of spoiling because the podcasters the listeners don't know what's about to happen. And sorry for this jump scare, y'all. So then, I find out that day, and that's the end of the week. I go back to school on Monday. I'm right back at school. At the school I didn't want to be at. It's the alternative school. I have no friends over there. The principal goes to my church, and she lets me sit in her office. No, that's a good thing. If you've met Tanya Long, she's impacted your life in one way or another.
That's special. Well, good. I'm glad to hear that. When you think of alternative school, you think of like the worst scenario.
She can put the hammer down when she has to. Yeah. Oh, and everybody also knows that. Yeah, okay. If she's made an impact on your life, you also know she can lay the hammer down when she has to. But going to church with her and then also being at her school, I think helped so much. And she's loved me for years now. I've always been her Ava, and she's T. Everybody calls her T at church, and her grandson, in a sense, now calls her Sweet T. It's so cute. Anyhow, She would let me come into her office and lay in her lap. She'd hold me in her lap and let me sit against her and cry.
Wow.
Even before I knew the diagnosis, because being a teen and pregnant and at school is hard. Wow. And sitting in a desk so pregnant is rough. They don't have the ones that you see in the movies with the big hole for your belly. They don't. And Sophie hated that. She'd kick against the table all the time. She's like, hey, and you're squishing me. Yeah, okay?
For real.
And I was just like, back up. Or like when I brush my teeth, I'd be leaning against the car. I feel a kick. She's like, bro.
Really? Oh, that's that's wild.
Yeah. And so then I go back to school on that Monday. I don't even want to be there. I don't want to be there. I don't talk to anybody. I cry most of the day. Everybody's like, what is wrong with her? And it was rough. But like, they all knew I was pregnant. Not that I'd told anybody, but they all knew. We live in a small town. And like, I remember people I was so like annoyed with because they were being overly nice to me. And I'm like, don't talk to me. And I'm like I feel like I'm a nice person at regular high school. I was so nice, so outgoing. Everybody knew my name because I wouldn't shut up no matter where I was. I'm a yapper day one. At that school, I was basically a mute for the whole year. Well, not the whole year. The whole time I was there, I did not talk. I didn't want to talk to anybody. I wasn't very outgoing. I got my work done, and then I went and sat on the couch in like the teacher's lounge because that was the most comfortable spot for me. That's actually where I did most of the rest of my classes, was just from that couch because it's self-paced. And it was rough. And it was a really dark time in my life. I felt very alone. And like seeing all of my friends and all my senior friends do all the senior things was rough.
Yeah.
And they invited me to everything, but it's like not that I had the energy or wanted people to. I hadn't announced Sophie's diagnosis.
Okay, I was going to ask you that.
Nobody knew unless I had told them.
Right.
Or unless somebody told somebody else. And so people would text me and they'd be like, how's your baby doing? I would tell them because I wasn't hiding it, but I also wasn't going to make a big post about it.
That makes sense.
And like, it was hard at first. People would text me, and it was more hard because I felt bad for them because I knew it would be awkward for them because they're like excited, and then they like, I know that they would feel bad for asking me.
Yeah. But
as it went along, it was so healing to talk about it. Like, everybody, like, I would like be with my parents somewhere and I'd see like my parents like off to the side, somebody talking to them because they'd be like asking questions about how I am and like, which was such a sweet thing. And like, but after every single talk, and I'm so grateful, don't get me wrong, I'm so grateful that they were worried about my well-being. But after every talk, they would, I would go to my parents and I'd be like, did they ask? And they'd be like, yeah. And I was like, why didn't they come to me? I was like, you're telling them that I want to talk about it, right? Like, I told my parents, I was like, I want people to ask me. I want to be able to share what's going on. I want to be able to talk about her because that keeps her real. That keeps her alive to me. Because if we don't talk about her, then she's already gone. Wow. And she's not yet. Wow. She's still on this earth. She's still here. People are acting like she's already passed away. She hasn't. This is my baby. And also, I didn't say this. The moment I found out, I said, and I told my parents, this is what I told them at that Olive Garden. God can work a miracle. Sorry, I don't know why I didn't touch on that quicker.
I'm so glad you said that.
God can work miracles. Yes. I was like, he's done it before. He can do it again. Yeah. And I prayed every day. All of my friends, we prayed every single day. My parents, everybody, we prayed for a miracle. Because I said, no matter if God heals Sophie here on earth or in heaven, he is still good. He is still God. But that's not going to stop me from praying for a miracle.
My best friend was on life support for 6 days, and same thing. We prayed for a miracle every single day. Yeah. And it didn't go our way, but we still trust God through that. Yeah. Thank you so much for supporting our YouTube channel. If you like this video, make sure you subscribe and smash that like button. If you would like to see another short clip from this episode, you can do so here. Or if you want to see the full conversation, you can do so here. And make sure you subscribe on Patreon if you'd like to partner with us. You can do that. The link in the description of this video. Thank you so much, and we'll see you on the next one. Cheers.